I
And
see it.
we're recording.
Thank you. Good morning. I would like to call to order the meeting of February the 11th for the Municipal Accountability Review Board. I am Kimberly Kennison. I'm the designee for Secretary McCaw. I do not believe that Christine Shaw, the designee of the treasurer, is with us as of yet. Want to bring to the committee's attention, Secretary McCaw this morning is presenting the governor's biennial budget to the Appropriations Committee, so she's unable to join us today. And so we divided and we conquered, and I got to Marb, and she has the appropriations. So the agenda is really a lighter agenda today with the subcommittee updates and an update on the monthly financials. We do have a quorum, and the second item on the agenda today is public comment period. If there are any members of the public that are attending this telephonic meeting, then would you please, you get an opportunity to speak. We would ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes and you mention your name and the town. I'm wondering if there is anybody on this call today that wishes to speak under this public comment period. It does not look like we have, so I'm going to move on to the third item of the agenda today, which is approval of the minutes from January the 14th, which is a regular meeting. Before I ask for a motion, I do have one change that I would like to have Julian make, and that is to add David Biller to the attendance, because I know that he attended a little later than the start of the meeting, but I do know that he was in attendance. So that's one change that I would ask. And that's the only change I have at this moment, but I then ask for a motion to approve the minutes with the change that I suggested.
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you, Sal.
I will second that.
And I'm sorry, who was that? Whose name was that on the second?
Tom.
Tom. Thank you. Sorry, Tom, I didn't catch the voice. Any other discussion about the minutes today? I don't hear any, so we will move on to a roll call for approval. Please state whether you choose to approve, if you are opposing, or if you are abstaining. Julian?
Mr. White,
Approve.
Mr. Waxenberg,
Approve.
Mr. Luciano,
Yes.
Mr. Hamilton,
Yes.
Mr. Felsigno,
Yes.
Mr. Brockman,
I know
think he's
he's on the
muted.
call too. Yep.
Ms. Kennison.
Yes.
Are there any other members of the board that I didn't mention that have joined? Okay, that's everybody.
All right. Thank you. And the minutes have been approved, and we will move on to agenda item number 4, which is the City of Hartford and an update on the City of Hartford. The subcommittee met on January the 28th. A couple of good items happened at that time where Bloom Shapiro presented the FY20 audited financials and the financial results. Julian, can you, I know that he's provided an update, but Julian, I want to quickly give us a brief overview of what happened at the subcommittee.
Yes, the auditor did a full presentation. There were no findings in the audit, no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, and the city's ending fund balance was in line with the projections that we had been provided updates on, over the few months leading up to the completion of the audit. And I did attach the auditor's handout from the meeting that's in the meeting materials that were distributed earlier, so you can go through and see the highlights from their presentation. And we also got an update on the status of the Board of Education's plan for conducting a special education study. This was a study that was going to look at data to explain the drivers um, of participation in special ed programs and services and drivers of the costs, and then also to come up with a strategy and plan for providing as good or better services and managing costs, with likely the likely strategy being to bring more services in-house where that made economic sense and the Board of Ed had or could develop the capacity to do that. It's kind of hard to paraphrase the conversation because it was pretty in-depth conversation. That study for the time being has been put on hold, partly due to the COVID situation and the fact that there are a number of students that are have not been attending, and uncertainty about who would come back into district at a later point, and a great deal of uncertainty around the program. Where we seem to land was that we would look towards moving forward with getting the background data and doing an analysis, and you potentially using a consultant to move forward with that aspect of the of what the original study was going to look at. We did receive, as promised, a list of follow-up questions from Mr. Waxenberg, and the subcommittee members have been asked if they want to add some questions to that list to have answered either by the Board of Ed now, if the information is obtainable, and or through the subsequent RFP effort. And I think there will be a little bit more discussion about how we move forward with that at the upcoming meeting. And that was the extent of our subcommittee meeting in January, and our next meeting is scheduled for February 25th.
Thank you, Julian. Moving on to the next item on the agenda would be the review of the monthly financials. And so I will turn it over to the mayor and or his team to provide us with an update.
Thanks. So I'll walk through the top lines, and then we can go into as much detail as you want. And I can't see attendees, but I think my team is on the line. The quick summary of the monthly reports, which are as of December 2020, is that our projection for this fiscal year has improved. We're now projecting a modest surplus of $280,000. The main drivers of that are some favorability on the revenue side, that is unplanned, but just under $500,000 is in unbudgeted tax abatement decreases because of refinancing activities by taxpayers. So as they refinance, they have to either pay or bump back up. And so we benefited from some of those unexpected refinancings. And then just over $400,000 from conveyance fees, including the sale of a large property in December. So just over $900,000 in additional revenue there. The expenditure side did have some increases as well. They're obviously offset by the revenue increases, but the expenditure projections increased primarily because of continued projected increases in energy tipping fees and waste disposal fees. So altogether, again, we're looking at currently at a $280,000 favorable variance at the end of this year. I will say, as I've noted in prior meetings, that we think we're taking a conservative a conservative estimate right now of our health costs and potentially some fringe reimbursement costs through grants. So there's some other areas of potential favorability, but we're not confident in them yet.
Thank you, Mayor. I do not have any questions as after I've gone through your financials, but I will ask if any of the MARB members have any questions for you or your team.
Yeah, this is Tom Hamilton. I probably should know the answer to this, but it's not occurring to me. So I'm looking at the actual expenditures from 1920 on benefits at 78.1 million, and the budget this year is up at 93.8, and the projection's 95.4. So what was the reason for the? I'm assuming it may be an accounting type change, or is that really a $20 million increase in benefit costs from 1920 to 2021?
So I'll take a stab at that, but then ask Leanne or Jen to jump in. I think that for FY20, what that is reflecting is the unusually high, unusually low healthcare spending that we had because of the pandemic, as many procedures were delayed. That may also have been some attrition in that year, but I think the biggest driver of that is the healthcare. Is that right, team?
Yes, this is Jen Hagenhall. Yes, that's my understanding as well, but we can definitely look into that to confirm that at the subcommittee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the members today?
If there are no other questions, can I raise just one thing just for the board's attention?
Of course.
So I just wanted to spend a second on an issue that I think we've talked about before in the MARB, but I just want to raise to everyone's consciousness again, which is that the city is carrying an outstanding receivable of about $2.2 million from unpaid private duty police work associated with the convention center. So, excuse me, not the XL Center. So the way that is supposed to work is that the city is reimbursed for those costs by CRDA. However, CRDA has been unable to pay those costs for quite some time, a couple of years. Again, this is private duty work. These police officers are contracted out. We pay them, but that private duty bill has been unpaid, and it's non-trivial. It's $2.2 million. So we're going to be working to try to get repayment on that. We don't want to write that off, and don't think it would be appropriate to write that off or write that down. But I just want to make sure that the MARB is aware of that.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Do you have any idea why they weren't able to pay when they hired you to do the service?
Well, I'll give you two answers. One, they didn't have the money. Two, I think the state has never appropriately accounted for the revenue that's generated by the XL Center and directed it to the right place. So there are many, many ways in which the XL Center generates revenue indirectly for the state, but that revenue goes into the general fund rather than going back to CRDA, and as a result, CRDA is unable to pay the bills.
Oh my goodness.
The third thing I would say is because the state has thus far failed to see the need for keeping that arena competitive, and as a result, the financial performance continues to deteriorate and will continue to deteriorate until the building falls down, unless the state takes a different view.
Okay.
So I have a question. I guess I assume, Mayor, in COVID, this is not a ongoing issue because I assume there aren't any events taking place, but absent COVID, is this potentially sort of an ongoing and growing exposure,
Yeah.
or is it, all in the past?
No, I think both of your points are right on. It has not been getting worse this year because there have been no events at the Excel Center, but it is an ongoing issue. The 2.2 million that I referenced is an accumulation of costs from 2017 to 2020.
Okay. Yeah, and if you have to write that off, that becomes a $2 million expense to you.
Right.
So what,
All right.
can I just ask a quick question on that? So what
Yes.
what is the city in the process of doing about it? What type of attempts have you made to collect the debt, or is there an ongoing conversation about it? Them just not paying it
Well, I mean,
probably isn't an option, right?
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think it is an option and the option. I think that the answer though is that it will need to, and I will say this: we are not the only vendor that is either unpaid or has late bills from CRDA. I think the answer is that the CRDA needs an appropriate allocation of operating dollars in the state budget or as some type of a certainly on an ongoing basis in the state budget and as a corrective measure looking back. So this fundamentally this is a state obligation. I would say more than a CRDA obligation, or to put it another way, a CRDA obligation that cannot be paid without the state.
Yeah, what I meant was it's their option, not your best option.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Right.
That's what I kind of meant.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for
But
answering.
we have no real.
You don't really have a recourse, right? I mean,
You don't have a recourse. How much do you budget?
I
Excuse me.
guess you could, going forward, when we're out of COVID, I suppose you could just refuse to provide police service.
Sure.
And I don't know how that all plays out. If you've got, a gathering and clearly public safety requires police service,
Right.
whether the city has the, mechanism to say they can't hold an event, and you tell them, we're not going to provide police service unless you pay us in advance or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there would be a few issues with that. One, I'm not sure that would be in either the city's or the state's interest to effectively make it impossible for the Excel Center to operate. Two, from a public safety standpoint, as you say, having an event without that public safety presence does not seem responsible. And third, we could not shift this onto a contractor because there is a contractual obligation that if security is provided at the Excel Center, it has to be by Hartford Police. And obviously, given the track record of payment, I'm not sure that you would find a private security company that would take that up anyway.
Sure. Yeah, and if you don't provide it, it will become a city issue anyways. If some kind of riot or fights break out, you'll have to respond anyways.
Right.
At the city's expense.
Right. And again, I just think it would not be responsible to let an event of that size.
It's not. Yeah,
occur
I would
without-
agree. Right.
So
Well-
again, I'm not sure that there's anything specifically the MARB can do, but I did want to raise this. It's an issue that we have raised with CRDA many times, and we have raised with OPM in the past. But I wanted MARB to be aware of it, and to the extent that the MARB, again, as we often talk about, to the extent that the MARB thinks of its role as in part advocacy for municipalities that it feels are doing the responsible work that the MARB demands, then we would welcome the MARB's advocacy in helping to address this issue.
Certainly. Mayor or your finance team, how much do you have budgeted for an allowance of write-off of bad debt? on collectibles. Probably not in the vicinity of 2 million, but I'm just would like to know.
Do you mean in general for all write-offs, or do you mean for
yeah,
public duty
all,
specific?
yeah,
Okay.
all your, yeah.
Leanne, you want to take that?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
When we record the receivables for these types of transactions, we defer them at 100% from the beginning. So when we need to write things off, it's a reduction of the receivable and a reduction of the deferred revenue. So we don't have to budget for the write-off of the allowance.
So
you're saying you're keeping everything at the balance sheet level, not on your profit and loss statement within the budget.
You got it.
Okay. And
But in the years in which these, I am no accountant.
That's okay.
In the years in which these expenditures occurred, they were real expenditures that hit our books.
Correct. And well, you claimed the revenue at that time. So at this point, waiting for somebody to pay you, but that's never going to come through. Leanne, have you had enough allocation within the balance sheet to cover these write-offs? Because if you don't, and you go south of the allowance that you have, it would have to hit, a profit and loss or somewhere afterwards to shore it up.
Correct.
So far, you've had sufficient budgeting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's deferred, 100% deferred, Kim, but I'd need to confirm that. I can get back to you on that one.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the board members?
The CRDA issue, going way back, always was a thought rather than a reality. I don't think budgetarily, with an assumption that the books would balance, and they are not, based on a variety of reasons, I would think, politically and fiscally. That said, it may be wise for the mayor to meet with the Hartford delegation and other delegations from various cities who are being adversely affected by CRDA's systemic problems. CRDA was never fully funded or never thought of as being, in my mind, a full operational agency, as the mayor stated, for budgetary purposes. So at some point in time, there needs to be an examination of what do they want to do with it, and how do you deal with the outstanding debt that CRDA has to its various vendors, Hartford being one of them, and I'm sure there's it's a legislative remedy as well as a budgetary remedy, but I would encourage the mayor to raise the issue, if he already hasn't, with the Hartford delegation. You have the chair of the finance committee, obviously, from the Hartford delegation. You have some pretty powerful people within the delegation that are sitting at the Capitol, to have a sit down with them and talk in general terms about systemically how this has happened, and how once COVID is over, it's going to be a continuation of a bad situation. So I think there needs to be recognition of that at the state level, with some accompanying legislation requiring a fix, because I don't think it was ever really fixed to begin with. There was always high ambitions that unfortunately were never backed up with action. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you,
We
Mark.
will certainly engage with our delegation. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, so the next item on the agenda, hold on, what's included in the packet, in addition to the monthly financial, is the financial statements, PowerPoint. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions regarding the PowerPoint presentation that was given. This is your opportunity to ask Hartford about it. It was discussed at length. The good news, as Julian brought to the attention, is the auditors issued a unmodified opinion for the financial statements, the state audits, and there weren't any findings within any of those financial reports. I guess we are all set. Then we're ready to move on to, I think that is it for today for the city of Hartford. The only other question I would have is if you had any updates that you would like to bring regarding the pandemic and the school side. Mayor, I do want to give you kudos for, I received your, if we had any, anybody about the pandemic and receiving shots, and I was glad to hear your CT alert on that. If we had anybody, that was 75 or older to do that, so I appreciate your proactive role in that, and that is good news. But any updates that you'd like to share before we move on to the next city regarding the pandemic?
I don't think that I have any other updates to share on that front. We'd obviously like to return to fully in-person school as rapidly as possible, but still keeping a close eye on numbers and on vaccination rollout. Where, as you say, we are trying to be both creative and aggressive in getting the vaccine out to residents in our community in every way we can. But I don't think I have any updates beyond that.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor, and your team for this time. And we will now move on to the town of Sprague.
Take care.
Take care. First Selectman, I know that you're with us today. And before we start, we do not have a subcommittee update because we did not have a subcommittee meeting. We are waiting to hear about the financial statements. I believe that we're going to plan to have a subcommittee meeting in the month of March because that will be the next item that will be hot on the agenda. For Selectmen, do you think that we will, your financials will be delivered at the time? Do you have an update as far as that is concerned with your audit?
Yes, and also to your question, Melissa is with me now.
Okay.
But yes, the audit is mostly complete. There are just a couple of open items, so I do anticipate that we will have it very shortly.
Perfect. Julian, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to the update?
I do not.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Then we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which will be a review of the financials.
Okay. So in the summary that's provided, the revenues are down just slightly from last year, but that was mostly because there was we had MARB funding in the lease payment last year, so that brought us up a little bit. Otherwise, we're pretty close to in line on revenue. Property taxes at the end of December were pretty close. Well, we're pretty much exactly the same as the prior year, although not noted here, but in January, we're down probably about 5%. Due to the deferment, but we still anticipate that everything will continue to come in. State grants are pretty close to the same, and expenditures are fairly close to the same. And the cash flow has been moving smoothly. In invoices, we've been able to keep things under 60 days.
Very good. That's all good news. Any questions concerning the monthly financials to the team? I did not have any. As I looked through everything, it looked pretty status quo and in line.
And Kim, I just had one other thing you had brought up. It's
yes.
been brought up through the MARB about an RFP for the auditors, and I did bring that forward to the Board of Finance and ask for their approval to send out an RFP, and they did approve that, so we will be doing that.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for doing that. I think that that is in your best benefit to do that, and it's time to You know, it's always good to get to switch auditors and get a new perspective.
Mhm.
Thank you. And Superintendent, I know that you're on the line in either between the city and between the town and the school. Any updates on the pandemic or anything that you would like to add from the Board of Education side of life and your financials, as I know you have a little bit of savings still.
We still have a little bit of savings. We have a surplus of about 165,000. Again, that's very conservative, so we're hoping it grows. Our budget was submitted under the 1.5, which is the 5-year plan. The Board of Education approved a 1.47% increase. Also, we are about ready to sign contracts with our renovation. That was approved 2 years ago by the town. And part of that is we're looking to add solar onto a roofing project. We're about ready to sign a contract with a consultant that will not bring any cost to the town. We're moving to fully in. Presently, we are doing 4 days a week. By the end of the month, we will be 5 days a week, which is fantastic. And we also have ESSER 2 funds, which is over 2 years, $331,475, which will be helpful.
Yes. Very good. We will look to get an update of your budget for the next subcommittee.
Sure, absolutely.
Perfect. Questions from the MARB? No questions for the town of Sprague today? All right. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so.
First Selectman or Superintendent?
No, I think we're fine. Stay well, everybody.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the City of West Haven. I do not know if the mayor is on. I have not heard that yet.
Yes, good morning. We're here, Mayor Rossi, Frank Chaplinsky, Michael Milone, and Attorney Tiernan.
Thank you so much. Good to hear from you. And so I will give a quick, the West Haven Subcommittee met on January the 26th. We had 2 large items on the agenda at the time. Probably good news on both sides, but I won't steal the thunder from the city. One part of the good news is that their audit was completed, and so they will be able to do upfront, provide us with some detail on that. And the second thing is progress has been made on the partnership. Do you want to add some details to that with the update that you provided in the packet, Julian?
Sure. So when we met in late January, we received the update on the analysis of the state partnership as it relates to the Board of Ed, and Michael Milone was spearheading that analysis. And with respect to the last meeting, answering the specific question about what the forecasted cost of moving retirees would be relative to the cost of keeping retirees in the self-insured plan. And so through that analysis, we're able to sort of settle on a plan going forward whereby the Board of Ed is going to move forward with transitioning the active employees and keeping the retirees in the Anthem plan. The move for the active employees is targeted for July 1st, and the Board of Ed will be taking the steps necessary to work with the state partnership and the communications plan and education for the unions and employees. And so that has come together. You have some of the highlights from the FY20 audit in the update, and then also the presentation from the auditor was included in the meeting materials, so you can see the highlights there, and the city may want to speak to some of those. And then we also got an update on the ADP project and the implementation of that system, which is scheduled to go live soon, this month. And then our next meeting is scheduled for the 23rd.
Thank you, Julian.
Mhm.
I'm going to turn it over to the City of West Haven, the mayor, and her team to give us an update on the financials or anything else that they want to comment on regarding the subcommittee. Mayor?
Yeah, good
Or
morning,
Frank.
all. This is Frank.
Hi, Frank.
So the financials you have, we are seeing very strong tax collections, which is, encouraging to see. We are running slightly ahead of where we were last year as far as a percentage of where we're projecting year end to be. You'll see the revenue projection. We are projecting an increase in some of the revenues. We're starting to make up some of the building permits and some of the other activities. And we did, you'll notice that I did spike out the COVID relief funds that came into the city separate from all of the normal operating revenue, similar to how I project the restructuring funds as well. So on page 2 of the financials, you'll see that down at the bottom. Given that revenue that came in, it was of course unanticipated, unbudgeted, but very welcome because we do see, considerable overages in overtime in public works, in the police department, as with the police department, as officers are out on COVID leave for quarantines or whatever. Of course, you can't leave those spots unfilled. So officers are being hired overtime in order to fill those empty slots. So the overtime in the police department is trending much higher than normal. It is projected to be significantly high at the end of the year. If everything goes according to my expectation, it would be roughly $200,000 to $250,000 overage on the police department overtime line. So those COVID funds are being put to good use. That being said, we are projecting a small surplus at the end of the year, given the fact that I just don't know what any remaining COVID activity is going to hit us. We have begun the vaccination process here in the city. So there are sites that are set up. Nurses and medical staff have been hired in order to administer those vaccinations. So of course that cost will flow through the city. From the sewer and the fire department side, again, we're experiencing the same tax collection increase as we've seen on the city side. I'm not projecting any significant shortfalls in either one of the funds. There's a small surplus being projected on the sewer side. That is assuming that we spend all of the contingency amounts and capital needs for the sewer within the current year. As we get closer to the end of the year, we'll be able to refine that. I am showing a slight deficit on the Allingtown side. I'm trying to get into why their overtime is so high. That is what's contributing to that. Based on where they are now and timing from prior years, that number is projected to be higher. Anecdotally, what I'm thinking is, since we did hire more individuals after the year started, that the timing on that overtime should start to diminish. So, as I get a better understanding of that, we should come back. I'm hoping that deficit will disappear. We'll get back to parity or a slight surplus there. Again, working on the algorithms for those projections. Of course, we go off of prior years, and everything that's happened in fiscal 20 and the beginning of fiscal 21 has thrown a monkey wrench into all of my my modeling, because all the timing and the modeling aspects go out the window. So those are being refined as we go forward. But as of this point, no significant issues that I'm seeing within the city.
Thank you. Is Matt on from the Board of Ed? No. Do you have any
I have not.
update on the Board of Ed? I noticed that
I
the
have-
expenditures are trending higher than before, where the cities is not trending higher.
I've requested forecasts from them in the last 2 months, and have not received responses in either period. So the Board of Ed page within the financials is still showing the budget amount as their forecast.
Okay. Can you reach out to them on my behalf, please, Frank?
I will.
Thank you. One other question on the fuel and the telephone. I noticed that the fuel number is running on the higher side if you look at the comparison from the prior year, but you also mentioned last month that the telephone was lagging. Are you still in a lag with the telephone?
I think so. We're trying to
Okay.
work through to see which bills are still outstanding.
Okay.
The Public Works Department is working short-staffed.
Oh.
I think along with everybody else, right? They had people out on quarantine, et cetera, which kind of throws a wrench into everything. I've got a person out in finance. We're in the midst of the budget, and that individual was the point person on
Key
the
budget.
budget. So, yeah, so I'm trying to pick up the slack there, along with help from some of the others in the department.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board members?
Yeah,
I have
One.
a few questions.
Who is that?
Pat Egan,
Hi, Pat.
how are you?
Good. Go ahead.
Good. Frank, could you just go back to what you're saying? You requested what from the Board of Education? And they didn't
I
provide it?
requested a forecast of where they thought the year-end expenses were going to land.
So he has the numbers listed as a flat line as they are in the budget, rather than any true up or any backup if we were to have the detail of where their actual performance lies.
So page 7 of the financial report is the Board of Education detail. And you'll see the last columns on the right there are projected numbers. They have, since I haven't gotten any projections, they're still reflecting the budget.
So we don't get those at all by like some type of standing directive from the MARB?
Yes, we have, and we have asked for them. So I don't know what is going on. And usually we would get something. So for some reason we are not. But
And
Yeah.
when do we generally get those, what, monthly or quarterly?
monthly.
I ask for it monthly from Matt, and typically he does respond and put the numbers in. But this period he didn't respond.
And when's the last time you got a projection if we're supposed to get it monthly?
I have not gotten a refined, a refined projection at any point during the year. The last numbers I got from them were the budget.
Okay, but Kim, you said we're supposed to get this monthly from them?
We are, and I know that I brought this up at the last month when we did not get that. So we will make sure that we follow up on this, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, this is now the 7th month, right?
6 months worth of activity.
Okay, all right.
But
So
they have participated on the monthly subcommittees. I can say that, but we will make sure that this gets through to us.
Okay. And I'd like to know why it hasn't, I guess, is the bigger question. The other thing is, Frank, when you say, with some folks who are out due to COVID exposures, whatever, what's the procedure that the city uses for determining who should not be reporting to work? What type of time are they placed on, as far as when they're out? Do we know, like someone says, hey, I've been exposed. How does that work? Let's say I'm a cop, I work in the finance department. How's it work?
Well, Attorney Lee Tiernan, I would like to think that we don't need law enforcement in our finance department because we're on the up and up. That being said, we follow CDC guidelines. We update ourselves on the CDC guidelines. We coordinate with our health director. So every decision is made individually. Our general policy is one of extended leave, leaves up to 2 weeks for protective purposes rather than shortened leaves. However, if someone can get 2 negative tests, we generally allow them back to work. But otherwise, we have protocols. Now, it did get shortened. The executive order shortened the protocol. We were going on the 14-day quarantine.
Now we're at 10.
On it.
Yeah.
And again, we err on the side. So, for example, in one department recently, we had an individual whose child that they live with tested positive, and the other thing we analyze is symptomatic or asymptomatic. Tested positive and is symptomatic. So we told the other 2 people in that office, stay home till we get more data. We fogged the office. We have a fogging machine and a cleaning protocol that we do in those instances. And then we also coordinate on Frank's side, on the financing side, which he can confirm that, and I'm sure Marv would want us to do this. We make sure that we access whatever COVID funds are applicable for any of that activity and expense.
Correct.
Okay, so these decisions, as far as what an exposure is made by the health director on each individual case?
The exposure analysis is first made by the individual who feels they were exposed, and then we collect data. If we need to communicate to somebody that they have been potentially exposed to someone, that is done by the health director because health information has a privacy cover that we want to go through the health director in terms of that process. And the health director actually has individuals who do COVID tracing. So they try to make sure that we gobble up and identify anybody who could be in the net of the exposure. And we do that in every instance. Sometimes it's very labor intensive, sometimes it's not so bad.
All right, let me clarify. Maybe I'm not asking it correctly. What I'm saying is this: is that the determination, if someone say would fall under being exposed, right? So under the 10-day absence for an exposure. So I'm a city employee, and I say I think I was exposed to someone with COVID. Who fields that question and determines whether it qualifies as an exposure? Is that determined by the health director, or is that being determined by department supervisors to say, okay, stay home for 10 days?
Well, most employees are still going through the same protocol they would use if they were sick, or if they had a child they had to care for, or an elder they had to care for. So the employee would call their immediate supervisor. Their immediate supervisor would communicate it to the personnel director. The personnel director supervises the health director. So this personnel director would then necessarily communicate that information to the health director. Because of the way COVID is, because of the way data collection is, the health director has access to private health information. So if your concern is that someone could fib about an exposure so they could get time home, we haven't run into that yet. None of our employees have any evidence, because we can confirm. It's pretty easy for the health director, not anybody else, just the health director, to confirm whether or not somebody is on the quote-unquote COVID list, and whether or not you have positive tests and so on and so forth. That being said, though, if someone has a reasonable fear, so if you have a symptomatic person who hasn't been tested
I want to
yet,
walk after this because I haven't done anything this morning.
Yeah.
sorry.
Sal needs to go on mute.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's all right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
But in any event, I mean, this is a deadly disease. So if someone says they are symptomatic or was in contact with somebody symptomatic, they get tested. We make them get tested, but we don't wait for the test results. We start with the premise that they've been exposed. We need to protect everybody, and then we have them get tested. And we've, provided testing for our employees at no cost.
Okay, yeah, all right. I guess it was a little confusing about the situation you talked about where someone's child tested positive, and then that particular employee would be classified as an exposure, but then 2 other people in the office were told to go home too?
Temporarily, then we'll have them tested. So,
But they're
so in
not
other
an
words,
exposure.
no, but in other words, so if your battalion chief and you had a shift, and the battalion chief said, hey, my kid, I think I was exposed last night, I live with my kid, my kid is symptomatic, tested positive, and
Right.
you two spent the day in a, one vehicle, then, we wouldn't want you going back to the firehouse and then, and potentially infecting everyone. We would say, Pat, stay home, please.
Correct.
Until we can get more results.
All right,
we would ask you to get
all I'm saying is, that's not an exposure under the CDC guidelines.
It is not.
So I'm just-
It is not. But it's us trying to
Protecting.
be proactive. And
right.
the
Okay,
other
well,
thing is we've been pretty lucky, knock wood, we think. And, we don't want to have, dozens of people out because we were less restrictive. We erred on the side of being more restrictive.
Okay. The other thing is, Frank, with the issue with Allentown with the overtime, you said there was hope this should be mitigating after the first of the year because you've hired some more folks, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it was due to, you were filling, obviously, filling vacancies using overtime up until that point. So is there a surplus then in payroll, in the payroll line? Because clearly those positions were vacant.
That's possible.
It is possible. The model that I have looks at, 3 years worth of timing for, overtime. Obviously, some months are going to be heavier overtime than others. So I don't just straight line it. I look at, in the past, what the back half of the year has done compared to the first half of the year. Obviously, if more overtime is being spent in the first half of the year, that's going to play into the model as it goes through.
And in the model, both of those items are in the same grouping of payroll and personnel, correct?
That's correct.
In the report that you provide to us.
In the report that I provide, but the model actually looks at each line separately.
Sure.
But in aggregate, obviously, the payroll line would be, for that one position, would hold a surplus, because for the first half of the year, no one was in it, and that would offset a little bit of the overage in the overtime line item, right?
Yeah, that's why I say I need to dig into this.
Okay. All right, I'll follow up with you.
I have a message out to the chief, the new chief. So I'm just waiting for a response.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the city?
Yeah, this is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
The IBNR costs associated with the board side of the equation, I believe, is over $1 million. Quite a while ago, Marb, I think it was Bob White, talked with the secretary about how Marb's role in mitigating those IBNR costs, should they move into the partnership plan. I guess my question is, how are those IBNR costs to be paid? Is there a plan to pay those IBNR costs?
There is a plan. Yeah, there is a plan. It was presented at the subcommittee, and we've worked through that with the Board of Ed. And that is to be paid, the savings that they receive in the first year. The superintendent has agreed to put that savings in the first year and to offset the IBNR costs of making the switch.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You bet. And I know that Matt joined us. So Matt, would you like to comment on the projections that and where the Board of Ed stands?
Sure. I apologize for being late. So right now, overall, the board feels we're in a very good spot. I know when you look at the projections, a little higher than it was compared to last year at this time. A lot of that is because we decided to have in-person learning starting in the beginning of the year. The majority of the items that we bought were bought up front, just to ensure that everything was ready to go. A couple of line items are also a little elevated as of right now because our COVID relief funds within Munis were not set up. The city has completed that. I don't have access to do that. So we will be switching those expenses to those appropriate funds. And then the final thing I think I'll point out, instruction seems pretty elevated right now, but we had a pretty substantial technology project that we did through E-rate through the school and library administration, and we get a 80% reimbursement on that, and we are still waiting for that reimbursement to come in. So once that all flushes out, we are in a very good position, and the position we expected to be in when we started the year.
Alrighty. Matt, I don't see in here that we received your projections. It says that you're right to budget at this very moment. Is that what you're projecting at this time, or did we just not receive your documentation as to where the board really stands? Right
now, I'm projecting at this time to budget for a majority of our items. Like I said, a lot of the items that seem to be overages at this point are because of the COVID relief funds not being set up when the money was spent. So I believe when you'll see this report next month, everything will flush out and the projections will make a lot more sense. All right, very good. We'll look forward to seeing that. Will you please have that ready? Maybe you could have a preliminary ready for a subcommittee so that we can Absolutely. At least have something ahead of time. Thank you. Not a problem at all.
Thank you. All right, then any other questions for them regarding the monthlies?
Yeah, so the report that Matt said we're getting next month is the report that we're supposed to be getting every month starting July 1?
He is saying that his projections are staying flat with budget is what he's saying, but the budget is now showing as if the actuals would be running on a projection side, that he's running on the high side. So he's going to provide us with a little bit more detail so that we can really see the differences. So the city could choose to continue to to not adjust for the Board of Ed, but the Board of Ed is very similar to what Sprague did, but the Board of Ed, we want to see how they really are a little deeper dive.
Right, I guess what I'm saying,
Okay.
Kim, is going back to what we discussed about whatever 10, 15 minutes ago when Frank said that he had not gotten any monthly projections from them as far as where they were at with their budget, and
Right.
that is supposed to be submitted to the board every month starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, correct?
If there are differences in what the budget is, he could then be providing a very similar format. But yes, you were right.
And we haven't gotten that for 7 months.
6 months. We're a 6-month update right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, for 6 months, we haven't gotten that.
Okay. Yeah.
But they're supposed to provide it to us every month.
Correct.
To be fair, Mr. Egan, the city side, I don't adjust any of the numbers off of budget until month 4 anyway, until I at least have 3 months under my belt and we can determine where things are, flowing through.
That's been the practice.
All right. Okay, so we're going to start getting these from the Board of Ed starting now?
Correct. And we have received them. We have received variances in the past, and this is difficult times too. Knowing with the COVID, if you're just saying that your numbers are elevated because they're including expenditures that are COVID, he's got some work to do to make some changes there.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that we should be getting these at least after the first quarter, and we haven't. So since he's on the phone.
Correct.
Right, listening to this, so Matt, I'll just address you directly, is that
Sure.
the expectation is that we will we get a monthly report as far as your projections of your year-end budget. Clearly, I know with things going on that there's a lot more variances to that because of some relief funds that will come the city's way, but that expectation hasn't been met, so I will expect that it will be.
Right, absolutely. And basically what I'm saying is if you take a specific line item in the report that was sent out, like the sites and repairs of improvement, the budget is $627,800. To December, it shows we spent about 1.25 million. What I'm saying is that I still expect for that line item to be within budget. That's why there hasn't been an adjustment. It is elevated because we did tons of HVAC work through our COVID relief funds that I was unable to move out of our operating budget because that specific fund wasn't created yet. So once those projects and those monies are moved out of the operating budget, the projections that are there will be correct.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And again, part of those problems really fall back to the fact that the city has not been able to fully provide all of the resources that they need to fill these positions. There has been delays in filling positions. I apologize. Police are going by. That there's been delays in hiring these positions, and that is a hindrance for this city. It continues to cripple them, if you ask me. So I'm continuing to push hard to make sure that they get the resources they need to address these fiscal infrastructure issues so that they can become sustainable. With Frank having a finance person down right now during budget time is an enormous strain. For him to not be able to fill a purchasing position for over 6 months is a strain. For the payroll position and the HR position to not be able to be filled for a period of time under a restructure of putting in a new payroll system is a strain. And so in order for them to move forward, you need the people in the chair to do the work, and you can't keep relying on the little bit of resources that you have. So I feel for them. I want them to know that, and the only way that they can continue to march on and fulfill all of these needs is to have those resources.
Right, okay. Frank,
Yeah.
how long are you out with this person in finance? How much longer?
Hold on a second.
I don't think it's appropriate to talk about that. That individual is out on a medical leave, so we should probably not talk about that position. Frank can talk about how he's responded to it, but I don't think we need to talk about that particular position, please.
Well, I'm not quite sure this runs afoul of any HIPAA issues. Estimating how long he's gonna have a vacancy in his office.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
You should have under doctor's order that you know that the person has been granted 6 months to be out, and that shouldn't be in violation, right, Lee?
Well, but I'm not prepared to talk about how long somebody's going to be out. I think the reverse is fine. We can talk about what we've done in the absence and what changes we've made, and Frank can discuss it. We have adjusted for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or I'll do it. I don't care who does it.
So we have started to move some of the responsibilities to other individuals. We have a temporary person from a temp firm, like account temps type of firm, to come in and to help us out and pick up some of the slack on some of the grants accounting. But it's not easy to just move the budget process to somebody who's never done it before.
Understand.
Fortunately, I drove the budget process in my prior life, so it's easier for me to pick it up.
Understand.
Selling himself short. So what we've done is we elevated a person into the vacant position. So that person is going to take over the vacant position and all the duties of that vacant person. We then elevated a second person into the person who just created a vacancy because they went into the vacant position. All right, now we're going to take another employee and fill the next position, and then I think we're going to be looking to do, we're going to be looking to embrace the philosophy that Ms. Kennison has said when we do our budget process to make sure that Frank has all the human resource tools that he needs. So we're not standing still. Getting the audit done on time probably froze some duties, but we're pretty much, I wouldn't say we're at full strength, but we're at probably 89%. So things are moving forward better than they were 8 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Tiernan. Okay, any other questions about the monthlies? All right, Mayor, would you like to talk about just before I give a brief overview of the audit and your successes to the mark?
Thank you, Kim. Yes, we're very pleased that the audit was done on time. First time in over a decade, definitely even longer than that. I just don't have the last year that we had an audit on time. And we had favorable operations at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year. So we are very pleased. We all worked together and we worked very hard because originally they wanted to put it on extension in November and said, well, we still probably could make it, but I wanted to just push ahead and only sign an extension in the event that we absolutely needed an extension. So I am very, very pleased. I'm very pleased. Frank did an excellent job. Finance, we all, as I said, worked together to get this done on time. And we want to continue to have our audits on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to remind everybody that they changed auditors this year. So this was definitely a Herculean effort to be able to get this done. They were issued an unmodified opinion on their regular financials, their state and their federal financial reports. There are some audit findings that were disclosed. I think that we will take that up at subcommittee when Frank can compile all of those findings and provide us with an update. There is one area of attention that is needed, but I want to take that up at the subcommittee as we start to move forward. The next item is I just was looking for an update if you have anything from either the school or the city side on the pandemic that you want to bring to the MARB's attention or anything else.
Well, from the city side, we are going about running vaccination clinics. So we're trying to get as many people in the right groups, of course, vaccinated. There will be another one this week, and there have been vaccination clinics for the last 2 weeks. And we continue to put up and give out a lot of information, not only to our employees, but also our residents as well, as what is going on with COVID and how still to protect yourself. And just because you get a vaccine doesn't mean that you can walk around without a mask and go back to normal yet. So we are definitely bringing forward that. So as far as the COVID side, I don't know with Board of Ed, but that's on the city side.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, do you have an update on the Board of Ed?
Sure. So, in terms of schools, we are doing in-person.
I don't think the superintendent is on the line, correct?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
I don't think the superintendent is on the line today.
No, he's not. So
okay, thank you.
From the school standpoint, students are coming to school in-person learning every day. We're having half days, and lunch is served at the end of the day along with breakfast for the next day to limit the transition times within the schools. We haven't seen very many positive cases or anything to shut the schools down. So things are very, very positive within our schools.
Very good. Thank you.
Tim, just real quick, because we never get much good news on these reports. Lee Tiernan. So just quickly, two things that I will probably report on more at next month's meeting. Because of the vaccine, we had delayed a monetization of parking, a greater monetization of parking in the city because of COVID. But now that we have a vaccine, we decided that we wanted to be ready to go when we get out of this tunnel. So we should have a plan in place that is active no later than mid-May, so that we're capturing even some of the beach parking at that point, and then more monetization up near the university and the Veterans Hospital and around the train station by the fall. And I should have a better idea as to what that means and better numbers in the next month or so. What I plan to do is put together a summary of how our new investment enterprise zone is going. So that, again, all good news. And so I'll be able to give you some information of where that is, what we've done to try to increase development in the city. That's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you, City of West Haven. Appreciate your update. Be safe, and nice speaking with you. We'll talk to you in the subcommittee. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Next item on the agenda is other business. The only other business that I have at this time is the contact information that was sent out to you all for update for the board members, and would hope that you could get that back to us ASAP. We need to get a report to the secretary, so it would be helpful if we could have all of those responses by tomorrow. Would be very helpful. Julian, do you have anything else that we need to add to other business?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Sal.
Can you resend that?
Of course we can.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions or comments under other business? And Julian, do you have anything else to add?
No, I have nothing to add.
Sal Luciano, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you, Stephen, and everybody in favor. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Stay safe. Appreciate your time and commitment to this. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aye.
Sure.